Now then, it's about time we got on with this. It's been sat here for, I'm guessing, about a year, with various parts that are on the bench here have been in the workshop, stored away. Anyway, I was in sort of work mode and there was lots of other things going on, and so far this year we've got the veg plot going very well, and we're nearly up on firewood for next winter. We've got maybe another 4 or 5 cubic meters to cut, which ain't too bad. What else have we got? The solar is working amazing, as is the grid side and the diverters. So I just thought, no, just take a bit of time out and let's have a look at this drill. Since I did the last video, I've come across a few bits, and also I was bearing in mind what Stephen Deakin said about using multi-V belt, or no, multi-V type flat belts. I think they're called serpentine belts in the automotive trade, and I got various choices, but then I came across some interesting bits of kit. So we get into the nitty gritty now. Need to look at the gearbox, the flat belt pulleys, the main top shaft, all sorts of stuff. So let's crack on with it. Right, I've got lots of things to show you. This is the top flat belt pulley. Just in there, there's an oiler. So if you got one of these and you don't know about that, there's an oiler there. And deep in there, and let's see if we can zoom in. Right deep in there, there we go. That is the bolt that holds it on the shaft. And if you notice, there is a slot in the top, and that corresponds with a hole in the appropriate pulley. So A, you know where to line that up if you take the shaft out, and B, you can wind it in quite well and then just nip it up with a spanner. When you undo that, the shaft will push out. I've tried it. So it's not like sweated on there or shrunk on there or anything. It's just a tight push fit. A press will push it out very easily. So that's what I was going to do earlier on, but I've come up with another idea. So let's just come back a bit. Now then, if you remember, it didn't engage in gear properly. Yeah, let's just zoom in a bit more and change the angle. So this slides like that, but it's tight there, so it wasn't able to go all the way across. So all I need to do is clean that up with a bit of, take the oil off and clean the rust off. You can see how far it's supposed to go to there, and it doesn't. So we'll clean that up, that will then work. Next thing, and let's zoom down on these bearings. The end caps are different sizes, which is a good thing, and as you can see, actually the white metal is pretty good. You know, it's not worn away down to that oil groove. And the same on this one. A little bit of staining there from rust or something, but they're not bad, so I'm quite happy about that. So what else have we got to show you before we start putting things back together? Oh yes, the gearbox, which is over there. So let's go and look at that. Right, this is a grease-filled gearbox, and that's the lay shaft in there that just spins, transferring the drive around to a different ratio. But this is the bit that's the interesting bit. As you can see, that is the selector and there's a little bolt there, square headed at the back, that nips it onto the shaft. That was not tight enough really, it was a bit loose, so it was slipping on the shaft. And then this here, don't lose that bit, because that bit sits in the gear selector and it's fairly worn. Let's just zoom in on that, see if we can see it. In fact, we can see it. See how much wear there is there. Now, I'm not quite sure what to do about that. I'm not sure whether it's steel or cast. I imagine it's steel, so if we need to, we can build that up with a bit of weld. So that selector pawl, or whatever you want to call it, fits into the groove there. So what I'm going to do is, I'm taking Stephen Deakin's advice for the moment, because I can, and there's no great rush. I'm going to clean that shaft up, and then I came across this electric motor, and look what's on the end. So, and I'm thinking, let's just walk round here, that washing machines, you know, they have to start against quite a lot of weight. So I'm thinking that for occasional use, one of these washing machine belts, and I've got loads of these, and this is a J5, so in other words it's got 5 ribs. I'm thinking that will run on there, and it will run on the flat belt pulley quite well. If it slips, then obviously it's not up to the task, but I figure it's worth giving it a go. The main thing is that the motor is going to have to be on some sort of sliding pivoty arrangement for adjusting the gears, but I really want this drill for drilling big holes, so we're looking at sort of 50 revs, that sort of thing. We're not going to be asking this to do 500 or 1000 revs. We're really down at the low end of the revs. So maybe we just set one speed and that'll do, but we'll have the option here. We've got 4 different sizes there, although I prefer to run on this one for more grip. And then we've got 3 different sizes on the flat belt. So that should be enough. And then of course we've got the 2 speeds in the gearbox. More than enough. And that motor there is 750 watts, which is 1 horsepower, and that is more than enough for this drill, especially when it's geared down. Yeah. The only problem is it's 2,800 revs, so it's not really a problem. It just means that, you know, the gearing's even more important, because a normal electric motor would be 1,420 revs. So this is a bit faster, or twice the speed. So we'll just have to account for that. Anyway, let's crack on. So I've just put the camera on fixed focus so it doesn't want to be constantly changing its focus as I move my hands around. So let's just get rid of some of that built up muck. This is 400. No, I think we're going to have to get a bit coarser material on that, or a wire brush or something. Oh, that's better. Let's move that out of the way so it's not clonking quite so much. You've got to bear in mind that this was sat outside for quite a long time, in a yard, uncared for and just going rusty. So there's bound to be things like this. And just bearing in mind the wear on that gear changing pawl, it's quite phenomenal that the white metal bearings are still alright. The grease is very thick in the bottom. I'm not actually going to clean it off at the moment. If I want to, when it's all sorted and I'm happy with things, I can then take the gearbox apart and clean all the gunge out. But at the moment, I just want to make sure that the theory works. I want to see if that belt will drive properly. If not, I've got a serpentine belt that came off the Frontera, and I've got an alternator multi-groove pulley, and those belts are about 1.1 inch wide. So worst case scenario, I'll have to use one of those. But it'd be nice to see if this works. I mean, washing machine belts do take a lot of grease, backwards and forwards, and starting under quite a heavy load with a lot of weight. And the drum pulley is just flat. There's no grooves in it. So theoretically, it should work. The rust has really quite got into that. Let's do some more. So that was obviously on the downside, so it's not rusted. Maybe it'd be better to run the paper that way, so it's not as easy. I mean, this is going to run for maybe an hour in the next decade. It's not as if I'm going to be using it a lot. But if you want to drill a 5/8 or an inch or 1.1 hole, then obviously this is the beast. And Uncle Harold, in his great wisdom, effectively, let's say he left me a lot of number 3 Morse taper drills. Oh, look at that, there we go, that's more like it. we're happy now. Just a bit more on that, just to clean it up a bit more. And clean this up, and we'll start oiling things up and seeing how they fit. So I'm just going to leave the camera running. There's 2 screws here, but they're in the pot, so that comes out. Now then, from what I remember, this is all a bit tricky. Mainly because of the rear bearing boss. Let's just wash this off. There are 2 grub screws there, half in the case, and they locate the gearbox. I'm just going to have to make this up because I can't remember. Obviously the gearbox wants to go on there. There we go. Okay, and the 2 grub screws are locating it, and there is a big bolt that goes up there. So I'm just going to put that in, just so that we don't accidentally knock the gearbox off. So, I know this shaft, hang on a minute, let's just wash these white metal bearings out. And then lube them up. Okay. And this shaft then goes in there. And that selector pole has to locate with that, but the belt pulley goes on here, and with the gear, and the gear obviously is here, so the belt pulley needs to go on, and then we'll just have to try our best. But I remember there's a problem with this, so let's just see how we get on. So I've got the belt pulley on the shaft, and as you can see, everything slides, and those dogs, that's direct drive, and then that comes off, and that gear there goes to the lay shaft. So effectively that is locked to the lay shaft, and then this either engages or disengages. Engages with the gear of the lay shaft or doesn't. So let's work this one out. So there's the problem. The gearbox has to wiggle to allow that last pulley, which is hollow in the end, to go round the boss there. So I'm just going to do that off camera, otherwise you'll just see me struggling forever. Okay, we sort of got it in place. So let's go on wobbly camera and look at the various bits. Hopefully you'll better see this. It's quite bright out there and not here. But there is the bevel gears, and there's the front bushing, and there's the drive for the power feed, and here's the gearbox. And just, you see that boss on the shaft? Just there. That's fixed to the shaft. And this shaft needs to come right up against it. So there was some adjustment between that shaft and the step pulleys. And the shaft has a step at the back that has to go inside that bearing. Let's just see if I can. There's a step there. I don't know whether I'm filming this or not, but there's a step there, and that needs to go inside there. So I slackened off the bolt that holds this pulley onto the shaft and adjusted it with a light tap. Now the only thing that seems to be a bit of a problem at the moment is the gear changing pawl isn't all the way in that slot, so I think I'm going to have to adjust that whole thing either on that bolt there, which may affect the end float of this, or we're going to have to take it all apart again and put some washers behind there. So because this has to move like that, so as the lever moves, this can pivot in there, but it is pretty worn. Anyway, we'll experiment with that, but basically we've got it back in there. But of course, guess what I've forgotten in my huge excitement? I've forgotten to put the belt on. Because it's an endless belt, I'll just have to lift stuff off and wiggle it through. So it looks like we've got that in position. Everything seems to be about right. And using this spanner, we can just tighten that gearbox down. Let's go around the other side. Well, that's not too bad. Nothing seems to be scraping unduly. Oil up the caps and put the caps on. So let's just pop some more oil. Don't tell me the oil can's getting a bit low. Oh, there we go. I'll put a little bit on those threads. I've already cleaned this up, this cap. And on these, it's the large cap to the front. And I'm not sure if there's any difference. Theoretically there should. That does feel a bit better. Now, when I took this apart, there were no shims between these caps. That's a bit better. So we'll just wind that down. And it's got an oil, and it's got an oiling point, so let's just again put a bit of oil in there. I don't want to tighten these down too much. Don't want to make those bearings rub too much. So that should do. Doesn't feel like too much play, so I'm figuring that'll do. So I'll just do the rear one, and I think that'll do for the moment. I've got to think about how I'm going to mount the motor. It'll probably be on some pivoty arrangement. But anyway, let's just have a look before I finish up. At the rear there's a plate or a mounting area, and there used to be from the other one I had, there was a cast rod that went down to the top of the motor, which was on the floor. So we can pick up from that point, and we might be able to pick up from the gearbox mounting bolt. Let's just have a look whilst we're here before we finish up. Let's have the motor on let's have the belt on there. Cool. And the motor would be something like that. So maybe we can clamp round here and go off to there and go off to there, and then just have some sliding arrangement. That doesn't look too bad there, does it? We don't want it on the other side because of the gearbox lever. So yeah, neat and tidy, tidy and neat. Catch up with you soon.